The massive alien ship hung in space like a silver mountain against the black void. Ambassador Lisa Grant pressed her face to the shuttle window and tried not to show her nervousness. Beside her sat General Pete Collins, a man whose gray hair and weathered face told stories of countless battles on Earth. His steel blue eyes never stopped moving, always watching, always ready. The year was 2157 and humanity had spread across 12 star systems. They had built cities on distant worlds and thought they were alone in the universe. Then the message came from the stars. The Galactic Council wanted to meet. They said they came in peace and wanted to welcome humanity into their great alliance of worlds. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat across from them, her tablet filled with notes about alien biology. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying every piece of data the aliens had sent ahead. Her scientific mind buzzed with excitement at the chance to meet beings from other worlds. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Lisa straightened her formal blue suit and checked her translation device one more time. The device would turn alien words into English and her words into their languages. At least that was the theory. She had never trusted machines completely, but today she had no choice. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressure. Beyond it stretched a corridor wider than any hallway on Earth. The walls curved upward and glowed with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Strange symbols marked the walls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Their escort waited just inside. It stood 7 feet tall with blue-gray skin that looked like polished stone. 4 arms moved in graceful gestures while its large black eyes studied the human visitors. The translation device crackled to life in Lisa's ear. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the alien said in a voice like wind through metal. "I am Speaker Valdris of the Xanthari people. The Council awaits your presence." Pete Collins said nothing, but his hand rested near his sidearm. Old habits died hard, and this felt too much like walking into enemy territory. The corridor ahead stretched into darkness, and he could hear movement echoing from unseen chambers. They walked for 10 minutes through passages that branched and twisted like the inside of a vast organism. Other aliens moved past them in the side corridors. Pete caught glimpses of creatures that looked like giant insects, others that seemed made of living crystal, and some that defied description entirely. The meeting chamber opened before them like the inside of a cathedral. The ceiling vanished into shadows far above while rows of seats curved around a central speaking area. Beings from dozens of worlds filled those seats, each stranger than the last. Lisa had studied the files, but seeing them in person made her stomach clench. The insectoid delegates clicked and chittered to each other while their compound eyes tracked every human movement. Crystalline beings hummed in harmonics that made her teeth ache. Somewhere in the crowd, something that looked like a walking tree swayed back and forth. But it was the reptilian guards that caught Pete's attention. They stood at attention around the chamber perimeter, each one 8 feet tall with scales that shifted color from green to brown. Their large yellow eyes missed nothing, and their forearms ended in hands that could easily crush a human skull. Speaker Valdris led them to seats in the center of the chamber. Lisa felt like a specimen under a microscope as hundreds of alien eyes focused on her. The translation devices created a constant buzz of whispered words in her earpiece. "Humans of Earth," Speaker Valdris announced, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "You have been chosen to join our great Council of Worlds. For 50,000 years we have worked together to bring peace and order to this galaxy." Lisa stood and activated her own translation device. "We are honored by your invitation," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Humanity looks forward to learning from your wisdom and contributing what we can to galactic peace." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Some sounded approving while others carried notes that made Lisa's skin crawl. She had expected this meeting to be difficult, but the tension in the air felt dangerous. Pete Collins watched the guards more than the speakers. Something about their positioning bothered him. They stood in perfect formation, but their attention kept shifting to the human delegation. One guard in particular seemed to be studying Pete directly. Dr. Rodriguez began taking notes on her tablet, documenting every species she could see. The variety was staggering. Some aliens breathed different atmospheres through mask-like devices. Others seemed to exist partially in dimensions her eyes could not fully perceive. The formal proceedings continued for hours. Trade agreements were discussed along with cultural exchange programs. The aliens spoke of sharing technology and knowledge. They painted pictures of human colonies joining a vast network of worlds. But Pete noticed things that worried him. The questions the aliens asked focused heavily on Earth's military capabilities. They wanted to know about human weapons, defense systems, and the structure of Earth's armed forces. When Lisa deflected these questions diplomatically, the aliens pressed harder. During a break in the proceedings, serving creatures that looked like metallic spiders brought refreshments. The food was carefully prepared to be safe for human consumption, though it looked and smelled like nothing from Earth. Pete excused himself to use the facilities they had been shown. The corridor outside the chamber was quiet except for the distant hum of the ship's systems. As he walked, he noticed one of the reptilian guards following at a discreet distance. At first he thought it was normal security procedure, but something about the alien's movement pattern felt familiar. It reminded him of techniques he had learned during his years with the Navy SEALs. The way the creature moved from cover to cover, how it kept its hands free and ready, the constant scanning of potential threats. When Pete stopped to examine what looked like a piece of alien art on the wall, the guard stopped too. In the reflection of the polished surface, Pete saw the alien make a subtle gesture with its lower right hand. 3 fingers down, thumb and pinky extended, held at chest level for exactly 2 seconds. Pete's blood went cold. That was a SEAL tactical signal, meaning enemy spotted, maintain cover. It was not a gesture any alien should know. It was classified information taught only to the most elite human special forces. The fact that this creature knew it meant someone had been teaching aliens human military secrets. Pete forced himself to continue walking normally, while his mind raced. Either these aliens had captured and interrogated human military personnel, or something much worse was happening. The diplomatic mission suddenly felt like a trap, and Pete Collins realized that humanity might be walking into the greatest danger it had ever faced. Pete Collins returned to the meeting chamber with his mind spinning. The reptilian guard had resumed its position along the wall, but Pete could feel those yellow eyes tracking his every movement. He took his seat beside Ambassador Grant and tried to look calm while his heart pounded against his ribs. The afternoon session dragged on with discussions about mining rights and shipping lanes. Pete heard none of it. His attention stayed locked on the guard who had made the SEAL signal. The creature stood perfectly still like a statue, but Pete knew it was aware of his scrutiny. Had he imagined it? Pete had seen combat in 7 different star systems, and his eyes rarely played tricks on him. The signal had been perfect, executed with the precision of someone who had practiced it hundreds of times. That level of skill only came from intensive training, by someone who knew the system inside and out. Dr. Rodriguez leaned over to whisper in his ear. "General, are you feeling all right? You look pale?" Pete managed a tight smile. "Just tired from the long day," he lied. "These formal events always wear me out." But his mind kept working through the possibilities. If aliens knew SEAL tactical signals, they had either captured human special forces personnel or someone had willingly taught them. Neither option was good. SEAL communications were classified at the highest levels. Even most regular military personnel did not know the full signal vocabulary. The meeting finally ended as the alien ship's lighting dimmed to simulate evening. Speaker Valdris announced that dinner would be served in the main dining hall, and that the humans were invited to join various alien delegations for informal conversation. Pete saw his chance. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, he deliberately lagged behind. The reptilian guard was assigned to escort stragglers, which meant Pete could get close without arousing suspicion. The dining hall was a marvel of alien engineering. Tables adapted to accommodate dozens of different body types, while the air circulation system managed multiple atmospheric requirements simultaneously. The food ranged from recognizable fruits to dishes that seemed to move on their own. Pete found himself seated at a table with several insectoid delegates and 2 of the crystalline beings. Their conversation centered on trade routes and mineral extraction, topics that normally would have bored him senseless. But he was not really listening. His attention was focused on the reptilian guard standing near the wall behind him. The alien was close enough now for Pete to study its features in detail. The creature was clearly built for combat with powerful limbs and natural armor plating along its shoulders and back. Scars marked its hide in patterns that suggested a long military career. This was not some ceremonial guard but a seasoned warrior. Pete made his decision. During a lull in the dinner conversation, he reached for his water glass and deliberately knocked it over. As he bent to clean up the spill, He used his body to shield his hands from most observers. With careful precision, he made the SEAL signal for all clear, proceed with caution. The response was immediate. The reptilian guard's lower left hand moved almost imperceptibly, returning the proper acknowledgement signal. The gesture lasted less than a second, but Pete saw every detail. This alien definitely knew SEAL tactical communications. Pete's appetite vanished completely. He pushed food around his plate while his mind raced through the implications. The best-case scenario was that aliens had captured human personnel and tortured the information out of them. The worst case was that humans had willingly betrayed their own species by teaching military secrets to potential enemies. Ambassador Grant noticed his distraction. General Collins, the Xanthari delegation has asked about Earth's orbital defense platforms. They would like to arrange a tour tomorrow. Pete forced himself to focus. Of course, Ambassador. I'll coordinate with Fleet Command to arrange appropriate access. But privately he wondered if showing aliens Earth's defenses was wise, when they already seemed to know far too much about human military capabilities. Dr. Rodriguez was having animated discussions with several alien scientists about comparative biology. Her excitement was genuine as she learned about evolution on different worlds. But Pete noticed that some of her alien colleagues were asking pointed questions about human physiology and reflexes. After dinner, Pete excused himself and contacted Lieutenant Jake Murphy using secure communications. Murphy was his intelligence aide, a sharp young officer with a background in analyzing alien communications intercepts. Jake, I need you to run a quiet investigation, Pete said when Murphy appeared on his private comm screen. Look into any reports of missing Special Forces personnel in the last 10 years. Also check for any unusual signals intelligence from this sector of space. Murphy's face grew serious. Sir, is there a problem with the first contact mission? Pete hesitated. I'm not sure yet. Just run the searches and don't discuss this with anyone else. That night, Pete lay in his assigned quarters staring at the ceiling. The alien ship hummed around him with sounds that reminded him uncomfortably of a military vessel. Through the small porthole, Earth hung in space like a blue marble. It looked peaceful and vulnerable. Pete had commanded troops in combat zones across human space. He knew the signs of an enemy preparing for battle. The way the alien guards positioned themselves, their constant state of readiness, the pointed questions about human defenses. It all added up to reconnaissance. But the reptilian guard's knowledge of SEAL signals suggested something deeper. That level of detailed military intelligence could only come from extensive contact with human special forces. Pete began to suspect that first contact had not happened recently. The aliens had been studying humanity for much longer than they claimed. The next morning brought Murphy's preliminary report. 3 SEAL teams had gone missing during classified deep space reconnaissance missions over the past 8 years. Official reports claimed they were lost to equipment failures or space hazards. But Pete noticed that all 3 disappearances had occurred in sectors of space that were now known to contain alien activity. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. The aliens had not just discovered humanity. They had been watching, learning, and possibly capturing human personnel for years. The formal first contact was just the public face of a relationship that had been going on in secret. Pete dressed in his formal uniform and prepared for another day of diplomatic theater. But now he knew he was not just representing humanity in trade negotiations. He was gathering intelligence on a potential enemy that knew far too much about human military capabilities. The reptilian guard was waiting in the corridor outside his quarters. As Pete walked past, the alien made another subtle signal, this time a warning about multiple hostiles in the area. Pete's blood ran cold as he realized the alien was trying to help him. Either this creature was playing an incredibly sophisticated game of deception, or it was genuinely trying to warn Pete about danger from its own people. Both possibilities terrified him equally. Pete Collins had walked into what he thought was a diplomatic mission, but he was beginning to suspect he had stumbled into the middle of an alien intelligence operation that had been targeting Earth for years. Lieutenant Jake Murphy worked through the night in his small office aboard the human diplomatic ship. His secure terminal displayed classified files that painted a troubling picture of recent years. Pete Collins had asked him to investigate missing Special Forces personnel, and what Murphy found made his hands shake as he typed. The official records looked clean at first glance. 3 SEAL teams lost to equipment failures during routine deep space reconnaissance. Standard accident reports with proper signatures and investigations completed by the book. But Murphy had learned to read between the lines during his intelligence training. The timing was too convenient. All 3 teams had vanished in sectors that long-range sensors now showed contained alien activity. The rescue efforts had been called off unusually quickly, and the investigation reports contained subtle inconsistencies that suggested someone had been covering their tracks. Murphy cross-referenced the dates with communications intercepts from deep space monitoring stations. Earth's listening post had been picking up organized radio signals from those same sectors for over a decade. The signals used encryption patterns that human computers could not break, but they showed all the hallmarks of military communications. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was having her own disturbing realizations. She had spent the morning in the alien ship's science section, supposedly sharing biological data with her counterparts from other worlds, but the questions they asked made her increasingly uncomfortable. The insectoid scientists wanted detailed information about human reflexes and reaction times. The crystalline beings asked about human vision capabilities and how quickly humans could adapt to changing light conditions. Most disturbing were the reptilian researchers who seemed fascinated by human endurance and pain tolerance. Amy tried to steer the conversations toward more general topics, but the aliens kept returning to what felt like tactical assessments. They wanted to know how fast humans could run, how long they could fight without rest, and how well they functioned under stress. These were not the questions of beings interested in cultural exchange. During lunch break, Amy approached General Collins privately. She found him studying star charts in the ship's navigation room, his face grim with concentration. "General, I need to share some concerns about the scientific exchanges," she said quietly. Pete looked up from the charts. "What kind of concerns, Doctor?" Amy glanced around to make sure they were alone. "The alien scientists are asking very specific questions about human physical capabilities. It feels more like a military assessment than scientific curiosity." Pete nodded slowly. "I've noticed similar patterns in their other questions. They're gathering intelligence, not making friends." Amy pulled out her tablet and showed Pete her notes. "Look at this data they provided about their own species. The atmospheric requirements, gravity preferences, and temperature ranges for most of these aliens are remarkably compatible with Earth conditions." Pete studied the numbers. His military mind immediately grasped the implications, as if they evolved specifically to operate in human environments. Or as if they've been adapting to operate in human environments, Amy corrected. Some of these biological modifications look recent from an evolutionary standpoint. That afternoon brought the promised tour of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Ambassador Grant led the alien delegation through humanity's most advanced military installations with diplomatic grace. But Pete noticed details that made his skin crawl. The aliens showed no surprise at human technology. They asked technical questions that demonstrated deep familiarity with human engineering principles. Several times Pete caught alien delegates exchanging glances when Grant described weapons systems that were supposed to be highly classified. The reptilian guard accompanied the tour group, maintaining its position as security escort. But Pete noticed it was paying more attention to the human personnel than to potential threats. The creature's yellow eyes studied every human soldier they encountered, as if memorizing faces and capabilities. During the tour of the main defense station, Pete managed to position himself near the reptilian guard, while Ambassador Grant explained the orbital cannon array. He made a complex series of tactical signals, a complete mission briefing including target priorities and extraction protocols. The alien's response was flawless. It signaled back with perfect military precision, acknowledging the briefing and adding a warning about compromised extraction routes. The exchange happened in seconds while Grant continued her presentation, but Pete felt his world shift fundamentally. This alien was not just familiar with SEAL signals. It was thinking and responding like a trained military operative. The level of tactical awareness required for such complex communication could only come from extensive training with human special forces personnel. After the tour, Pete contacted Murphy again with new urgency. "Jake, expand the search parameters. Look for any unusual communications between Earth and deep space over the past 10 years. Also, check for reports of alien sightings that were classified or covered up." Murphy's face appeared on the secure channel, looking haggard from lack of sleep. Sir, I've already found some disturbing patterns. The missing SEAL teams all reported unusual sensor contacts before they vanished. The official reports classified those contacts as equipment malfunctions. Pete felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Send me everything you've found. And Jake, be very careful who you talk to about this. If I'm right, this conspiracy goes deeper than we imagined. That evening brought another formal dinner, but Pete found it impossible to enjoy the exotic cuisine. He watched the alien delegates with new eyes, seeing intelligence operatives instead of diplomats. Their casual questions about human culture felt like interrogation techniques. The reptilian guard made contact during the dinner service. As servers moved between tables, the alien approached Pete's position and pretended to check security arrangements. In the brief moment they were close, it whispered a single word that the translation device barely caught. Hayes. Pete's blood froze. Commander Nick Hayes had led one of the missing SEAL teams. If this alien knew that name, it meant Hayes was either captured or dead. But the alien's tone suggested something more complex than simple imprisonment. After dinner, Pete found a secure location and contacted Earth directly. He bypassed normal diplomatic channels and reached out to Admiral Susan Clark, head of Naval Special Operations. Her face appeared on the encrypted channel, looking tired but alert. Pete, how's the diplomatic mission going? Pete chose his words carefully. Admiral, I need to ask about Commander Nick Hayes and his team. The official reports say they were lost in a training accident. Clark's expression grew guarded. That's classified information, Pete. Why are you asking? Because I think Hayes might still be alive. And I think he's been training aliens in human military tactics. The silence stretched for long seconds. Finally, Clark spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Pete, you need to be very careful what you say and who you trust. If you've stumbled onto something involving Hayes, you're in more danger than you realize. The connection ended abruptly, leaving Pete staring at a blank screen. Admiral Clark's reaction confirmed his worst fears. The missing SEAL teams were not accidents. They were part of something bigger, something that threatened not just the diplomatic mission but possibly Earth itself. Pete looked out his quarters porthole at the vast alien ship surrounding them. Somewhere in this maze of corridors and chambers, the truth about humanity's first contact was hidden, but finding that truth might require him to trust an alien warrior who knew secrets that could destroy everything Pete had sworn to protect. The morning of the third day brought news that made Pete Cullen's stomach clench with dread. Ambassador Grant announced that the Galactic Council had requested a formal demonstration of Earth's military capabilities. They wanted to see human defense systems in action as part of the integration process. Pete sat in the briefing room aboard the human diplomatic ship, studying the alien request with growing suspicion. The demonstration would take place at Earth's most advanced orbital defense platform, with full alien observation of weapons systems, tactical protocols, and command structures. This is a reconnaissance mission disguised as diplomacy, Pete told Ambassador Grant privately. They're asking us to reveal our most classified military capabilities. Grant looked tired from days of complex negotiations. General, we can't refuse without insulting the entire Galactic Council. This demonstration could determine whether humanity is accepted or rejected from the galactic community. Pete understood the political necessity, but his military instincts screamed warnings. Ambassador, I think we're being evaluated for something much more serious than membership. These aliens know too much about us already. Dr. Rodriguez joined the briefing with her own concerns. The alien scientists have been asking increasingly detailed questions about human military psychology. They want to understand how we think under pressure, how we adapt to unexpected situations. The demonstration was scheduled for the afternoon. Pete spent the morning coordinating with Earth's defense forces, but his real attention focused on the reptilian guard. The alien had been assigned to the observation team, which gave Pete an opportunity to test his growing suspicions. As the human and alien delegations boarded shuttles for the defense platform, Pete positioned himself near the reptilian guard. The creature's yellow eyes met his briefly, and Pete saw intelligence there that went far beyond simple military training. The defense platform was humanity's crown jewel of military engineering. Massive railguns could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Energy shields could deflect attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. The command center processed tactical information faster than any human brain could follow. Speaker Valdris led the alien delegation through the platform with obvious interest. His questions were pointed and technical, focusing on response times, targeting systems, and defensive capabilities. Other alien delegates took detailed recordings of everything they observed. Pete found his moment during the live fire demonstration. As human weapon systems engaged practice targets in nearby space, he moved close to the reptilian guard and began a complex series of tactical signals. The signals told a complete military story. Enemy positions at multiple vectors, friendly forces compromised, primary objective threatened, extraction routes blocked, recommend immediate tactical withdrawal to secondary positions. It was the kind of complex battlefield communication that required extensive training to understand. The alien's response was immediate and flawless. Its four hands moved in precise patterns that conveyed not just understanding, but additional tactical analysis. The creature signaled back warnings about multiple hostile forces, compromised communications, and advised extreme caution in all movements. But then the alien added something that made Pete's blood run cold. It signaled a warning about immediate danger to the human delegation. Multiple enemies in current position. Extraction compromised. Trust no one except confirmed friendlies. Pete glanced around the observation deck with new eyes. Several alien delegates were positioned in ways that could quickly control access points. Others had subtly isolated key human personnel. If this was an ambush, the setup was already complete. The reptilian guard caught Pete's attention and made one more signal. A name sign that Pete recognized from his special forces training. Hayes. The alien was confirming that Commander Nick Hayes was alive and involved in whatever was happening. Dr. Rodriguez approached Pete during a break in the demonstration. Her face was pale with worry. General, I've been analyzing the biological data the aliens provided. Some of these species show signs of recent genetic modification, specifically for combat in Earth-like environments. Pete kept his voice low. What kind of modifications? Enhanced muscle density, improved reflexes, modifications for operating in Earth gravity and atmosphere. It's as if someone has been preparing alien warriors for operations on human worlds. The implications hit Pete like a physical blow. This was not just intelligence gathering. The aliens were preparing for military operations against humanity. The genetic modifications, the detailed questioning about human capabilities, the requests to see Earth's defenses. It was all preparation for invasion. But the reptilian guard's warnings suggested the situation was more complex than simple conquest. If aliens were preparing for war against humanity, why was one of their own warriors trying to help human forces? The demonstration concluded with a display of Earth's fastest response protocols. Human military units deployed from standby to combat readiness in minutes, showing the speed and coordination that made Earth's defense forces effective. The aliens observed everything with obvious professional interest. As the delegations prepared to return to the diplomatic ship, Pete made a decision that could determine humanity's fate. He approached Speaker Valdris directly, with the reptilian guard close enough to observe. Speaker Valdris, Pete said formally, I've noticed your people have impressive tactical awareness. Your security forces move with the precision of seasoned military professionals. The tall alien's black eyes studied Pete carefully. General Collins, your observation skills are as sharp as we expected. Yes, many of our people have extensive military experience. Pete decided to push further. Experience fighting what kind of enemies? Speaker Valdris was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the other delegates continued their conversations, but Pete sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Several aliens had stopped talking and were listening carefully. General, there are threats in this galaxy that require military solutions, Valdris finally said. Species that cannot be reasoned with or deterred by diplomatic means. The Galactic Council has survived for millennia because we understand when force is necessary. The reptilian guard moved slightly closer, its positioning clearly protective of Pete's location. The subtle shift confirmed Pete's growing suspicion that not all aliens supported whatever military plans were being discussed. And where does humanity fit into these military considerations? Pete asked. Speaker Valdris's expression was unreadable. That depends entirely on what we observe during these demonstrations, General Collins. Humanity's role in galactic affairs will be determined by your species' capabilities and reliability under pressure. Pete felt the weight of Earth's future pressing down on his shoulders. This was not diplomacy anymore. It was an evaluation that would determine whether humanity became an ally, a subject species, or a target for elimination. As they returned to the alien ship, the reptilian guard managed to brush against Pete in the shuttle corridor. The brief contact allowed for one more signal exchange. The alien's message was urgent and clear. Tonight, after sleep cycle. Maintenance Corridor 7. Come alone. Critical information about Hayes' mission. Pete acknowledged the signal while his mind raced through possibilities. Meeting an alien warrior in a deserted corridor was potentially suicide. But if Commander Hayes was alive and involved in whatever was happening, Pete needed to know the truth. The survival of his species might depend on intelligence only this alien could provide. Pete Collins waited until the ship's lighting dimmed to simulate night before making his way through the alien corridors. His sidearm felt reassuring against his hip, though he doubted human weapons would be effective against the advanced alien security systems surrounding him. Maintenance Corridor 7 was deep in the ship's engineering section. Pete passed through areas filled with machinery that hummed and pulsed with alien purpose. The walls here were functional metal, rather than the decorative surfaces of the diplomatic areas. This was where the ship's real work happened. The reptilian guard waited in the shadows near a junction of ventilation shafts. Up close, Pete could see the creature was even more imposing than he had realized. 8 feet tall with natural armor plating, 4 arms that ended in hands capable of crushing steel, and intelligence blazing in those large yellow eyes. "You came," the alien said through a translation device clipped to its chest. "I was not certain you would trust me." Pete kept his hand near his weapon but tried to appear relaxed. "Trust has to start somewhere. What do you know about Commander Hayes?" The alien looked around carefully before responding. "My name translates roughly to Stonewalker. I am not truly a guard but an operative working against certain elements within the Council. Commander Hayes trained me personally before he was moved to the primary facility." Pete felt his pulse quicken. "Hayes is alive." "Yes, and more than that. He is training select warriors from multiple species in human military doctrine, but not for the reasons the Council leadership believes." Stonewalker activated a small device that created a bubble of privacy around them. Pete's translation unit indicated it was blocking listening devices and long-range scanners. "General Collins, what I tell you now could start a war or prevent one. The choice may determine the fate of multiple species, including your own." Pete nodded for the alien to continue. Stonewalker's forearms moved in complex gestures as he spoke. "The Galactic Council has been observing humanity for 57 of your years. We detected your radio signals first, then tracked your expansion into space. What we found both fascinated and terrified us. Why terrified? Because humanity displays tactical innovation that we have never encountered. Your species adapts military doctrine faster than any known intelligence. You create new strategies during active combat. You coordinate between individual initiative and group tactics in ways that should be impossible." Stonewalker paused and studied Pete's reaction. The Council faced a choice. Integrate humanity as allies or eliminate you as a threat before you became too powerful. The debate has raged for decades. Pete felt cold despite the warm air circulating through the corridor. And what did the Council decide? They chose a third option. Test humanity thoroughly, then use your military capabilities for their own purposes. The missing SEAL teams were the beginning of that plan. Stonewalker activated a holographic display that showed star charts Pete did not recognize. "At the edge of our galaxy, something approaches that we call the Devourers. They consume entire star systems, converting all matter into more of themselves. We estimate they will reach the outer colonies in 23 years. The hologram showed a wave of destruction advancing through space, leaving empty void where star systems had been. Pete stared at the display with growing horror. The Council's military forces have proven inadequate against Devourer advanced scouts. Traditional alien tactics fail completely. But Commander Hayes' early reports suggested human military thinking might provide solutions. Pete began to understand. "So you captured our special forces to learn from them." "Not captured, recruited." Stonewalker's expression seemed almost human in its intensity. Commander Hayes and his teams were approached during their deep space missions. They were told about the Devourer threat and asked to help prepare galactic defenses, and Hayes agreed. He negotiated. Hayes demanded proof of the threat, full disclosure of the Council's capabilities, and guarantees about Earth's future role in galactic affairs. He also insisted on training only volunteers who understood they were preparing to fight for the survival of all intelligent life. The implications made Pete's head spin. So this whole diplomatic mission is the Council's final evaluation of humanity. They needed to see if your entire species possesses the same tactical capabilities as your elite forces. If you pass their tests, Earth will become the military training center for galactic defense. Pete leaned against the corridor wall as the pieces fell into place. And if we fail? Stonewalker's silence was answer enough. But you're warning me, Pete said. Why? Because I believe the evaluation is flawed. The Council leadership does not truly understand what makes humanity effective. They see only tactics and weapons. They miss the deeper principles of human military thinking. Stonewalker activated another display showing detailed analysis of human combat operations. Your species' greatest military asset is not technology or physical capability. It is your ability to inspire others to fight beyond their apparent limits. Hayes proved this by training alien warriors to effectiveness levels we thought impossible. Pete studied the data. It showed combat simulations where mixed human-alien units outperformed pure alien forces by massive margins. Hayes discovered that human leadership principles work across species barriers. Your concepts of individual initiative within coordinated strategy, adaptive planning, and fighting for purposes beyond personal survival, these ideas revolutionized our military thinking. So what's the problem? Stonewalker's expression darkened. The Council leadership wants to use these capabilities without truly accepting human equality. They plan to make Earth a subordinate military colony, training forces for conflicts determined by alien politics. Pete felt anger rising, using us as military slaves. Precisely. But there is resistance within the Council. Many species recognize that the devourer threat requires true partnership, not exploitation. We believe humanity should be offered full membership with Earth as an equal partner in galactic defense. Stonewalker deactivated the privacy screen. The final tests begin tomorrow. The Council will present scenarios designed to evaluate human tactical thinking under pressure. Your responses will determine not just Earth's fate, but possibly the survival of galactic civilization. Pete absorbed the enormity of what he had learned. What kind of tests? Crisis simulations? Military scenarios with no obvious solutions. The Council wants to see if humans can innovate tactics in real time when facing impossible odds. Pete understood. His years of combat experience had taught him that the most dangerous battles were fought when conventional tactics failed. And you think we'll pass? Stonewalker's alien features arranged themselves into what might have been a smile. General Collins, I have watched you operate for 3 days. You identified security threats, adapted to alien environments, and coordinated with a being from another species to gather critical intelligence. You did this while maintaining diplomatic cover and protecting your delegation. The alien warrior straightened to its full imposing height. Commander Hayes trained me well, but you surpassed his abilities through pure instinct and experience. If you are representative of human military leadership, the devourers will face an enemy unlike anything they have encountered. Pete felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Tomorrow would bring tests that could determine the fate of his species, and possibly the galaxy itself. But for the first time since arriving at this alien ship, he felt ready for the challenge. Stonewalker, how can I contact you if I need help during the tests? The alien warrior made a subtle tactical signal that Pete recognized. I will be watching, General Collins. And when the time comes, you will not face the tests alone. Pete Collins spent the night planning for tests he could not predict while his mind processed everything Stonewalker had revealed. By morning, he had developed a strategy based on one simple principle: treat every alien as a potential ally until proven otherwise. Ambassador, Grant called an emergency meeting in the human delegation's secure conference room. Her face showed the strain of sleepless nights and impossible diplomatic pressures. The Council has announced the final phase of evaluation, she said without preamble. They're calling it practical assessment of human tactical capabilities under stress. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her tablet of biological notes. What kind of practical assessment? Pete answered before Grant could respond. Military scenarios. They want to see how we think when conventional solutions won't work. Grant nodded grimly. The first scenario begins in 2 hours. We'll be presented with a crisis situation and asked to provide tactical solutions in real time. Pete made his decision. Ambassador, I need to brief you and Dr. Rodriguez on some intelligence I've gathered. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but our survival may depend on understanding the true situation. For the next hour, Pete shared everything he had learned from Stonewalker. He explained about the Devourer threat, the missing SEAL teams, and the Council's real purpose for evaluating humanity. Grant and Rodriguez listened with growing amazement and horror. "You're telling me this entire first contact situation is actually a recruitment effort," Grant said when Pete finished. "More than that. It's a test to see if humanity is worth saving, or if we should be eliminated as a potential threat to alien interests." Dr. Rodriguez studied her biological data with new understanding. "That explains the genetic modifications I've been seeing. They're preparing warriors for combat against the Devourers." Pete activated the room's security systems to prevent eavesdropping. "There's more." Stonewalker indicated that not all council members support using humanity as subordinate military contractors. Some want true partnership. Grant's diplomatic training kicked in immediately. Then our performance during these tests needs to demonstrate that humanity brings value as equals, not just as tactical specialists. The first test scenario was presented in the council's main chamber. Holographic displays showed a star system under attack by forces that defied conventional military analysis. The enemy appeared to be pure energy that consumed matter and converted it to more of itself. Speaker Valdris addressed the human delegation formally. "This scenario is based on actual encounters with hostile forces at the galaxy's edge. Previous council military responses have proven inadequate. Please analyze the situation and propose tactical solutions." Pete studied the display while his mind raced through possibilities. The enemy moved like a living organism, but fought with technological precision. Traditional weapons seemed to have no effect, and conventional military strategies failed completely. But Pete had learned to see beyond the obvious during his Special Forces career. He noticed patterns in the enemy's behavior that suggested weaknesses. More importantly, he recognized the fundamental flaw in how the Council was approaching the problem. "The Council is fighting this enemy like a traditional military force," Pete announced to the chamber. "But this threat requires biological thinking, not technological solutions." He gestured to Dr. Rodriguez, who joined him at the central display. "Dr. Rodriguez, please explain what you see when you analyze this enemy's behavior patterns." Amy activated her tablet and began projecting biological analysis onto the holographic display. The consumption patterns match those of certain parasitic organisms from Earth. They're not just destroying matter, they're converting it into reproductive material. Pete built on her analysis, which means they have vulnerabilities similar to biological organisms. They need resources to reproduce. They have growth limitations, and they can potentially be starved or poisoned. The alien delegates murmured among themselves as Pete and Amy developed their tactical approach. Instead of fighting the Devourers directly, they proposed cutting off resource supplies, introducing disrupting elements into the conversion process, and using the enemy's rapid growth against itself. Stonewalker stood among the security guards, but Pete caught the alien's subtle signals of approval. The reptilian warrior was confirming that their analysis matched intelligence gathered from actual encounters with the Devourers. Speaker Valdris studied the human proposal carefully. "This approach requires coordination between multiple species with different technological capabilities. How would you organize such cooperation?" Pete saw his opportunity to demonstrate humanity's real value. "Ambassador Grant, please explain how diplomatic protocols could coordinate the necessary alliances." Grant stepped forward with the confidence of someone who had negotiated treaties across human space. She outlined a command structure that preserved individual species autonomy while creating unified tactical coordination. Her approach balanced military necessity with political reality. "The key is making each species feel valued for their unique contributions," Grant explained. "Humans provide tactical innovation, but other species provide technologies and capabilities we lack. True military effectiveness requires genuine partnership." Dr. Rodriguez added scientific analysis that showed how different alien biological capabilities could be integrated into anti-devourer strategies. Her approach treated alien physiology as military assets rather than curiosities. The council delegates discussed the human proposals in hushed conversations. Pete noticed that reactions varied significantly between species. Some aliens seemed impressed while others appeared skeptical or even hostile. During a break in the proceedings, Stonewalker approached Pete's position and made a subtle tactical signal. Multiple friendlies identified. Proceed with integration protocols, Pete understood. Stonewalker was confirming that several alien species supported partnership with humanity, rather than exploitation. The test was not just about tactical capabilities, but about humanity's ability to work as equals with alien allies. The second test scenario was even more challenging. The holographic display showed a complex military situation where traditional command structures had broken down. Multiple species were fighting the same enemy but could not coordinate effectively due to communication failures and incompatible tactical doctrines. This scenario represents our greatest military weakness, Speaker Valdres explained. Council forces have superior technology but cannot achieve tactical unity. Individual species fight effectively alone, but fail when required to coordinate. Pete studied the scenario while pieces of a larger strategy formed in his mind. He had commanded joint operations between different human military branches and knew the challenges of integrating diverse fighting capabilities. But this situation was more complex than anything he had faced. The alien forces in the scenario had completely different concepts of leadership, timing, and strategic priorities. Traditional human approaches to joint operations would not work. Pete made another decision that could determine humanity's future. Instead of proposing solutions, he asked questions that forced the alien delegates to think differently about military cooperation. Speaker Valdres, have Council forces ever attempted tactical integration at the small unit level, rather than trying to coordinate entire fleets? The question sparked intense discussion among the alien delegates. Pete realized that they had been thinking in terms of massive fleet actions rather than the small unit tactics that made human special forces effective. Dr. Rodriguez supported Pete's approach by analyzing how different alien biological capabilities could complement each other in small integrated teams. Her scientific perspective showed possibilities that pure military thinking had missed. Ambassador Grant proposed diplomatic frameworks for creating these integrated units while maintaining species dignity and cultural identity. Her suggestions addressed the political obstacles that had prevented effective military cooperation. As the day progressed, Pete began to understand that the tests were revealing as much about alien limitations as human capabilities. The Council had advanced technology, but had become trapped in rigid military thinking that prevented innovation. Stonewalker made contact again during the evening meal, this time joined by representatives from 3 other species. The group included a crystalline being that communicated through harmonic vibrations, and an insectoid whose compound eyes showed remarkable tactical awareness. Through careful signal exchanges, Pete learned that resistance to the Council's exploitation plans was broader than he had realized. Multiple species wanted genuine partnership with humanity, rather than using Earth as a military training colony. But the resistance faced significant opposition from species that saw humanity as a threat to established galactic power structures. The final test scenarios would determine which faction gained control of humanity's future role in galactic affairs. 6 months after the Devourer outbreak, Pete Collins stood in the command center of New Geneva Station, Earth's newest orbital facility that had become the Galactic Defense Academy. Through the massive observation windows, he watched ships from dozens of worlds arriving with their most promising military personnel for training in human tactical doctrine. The transformation had been remarkable. What began as a diplomatic first contact mission had evolved into humanity's emergence as the military backbone of galactic civilization. Earth was no longer an isolated colony world but the strategic center of an alliance spanning hundreds of star systems. Stonewalker approached Pete's position with the confident stride of a warrior who had found his place in the universe. The reptilian's 4 arms now bore insignia marking him as Deputy Commander of Integrated Operations, the highest rank ever achieved by a non-human in Earth's military structure. General Collins, the morning briefing is ready, Stonewalker said in English that had improved dramatically over the months. We have reports from 17 training programs currently in progress. Pete nodded and followed his alien colleague through corridors filled with the most diverse military personnel ever assembled. Crystalline beings worked alongside human instructors to develop harmonic warfare techniques. Insectoid warriors learned small unit tactics from SEAL veterans while their hive mind coordination provided new insights into large-scale battlefield management. The briefing room contained representatives from 43 different species, each contributing unique capabilities to the growing anti-devourer alliance. Ambassador Grant presided over the political coordination, while Dr. Rodriguez led the scientific analysis division that studied captured devourer technology. The latest intelligence reports confirm our tactical assessment, Dr. Rodriguez announced to the assembled officers. The devourer advance has been slowed significantly since we began implementing integrated defense strategies. She activated holographic displays, showing the galactic rim where human-trained forces had established defensive positions. The wave of destruction that had seemed unstoppable was now being contained and pushed back through coordinated efforts between multiple species. Mao studied the tactical situation with satisfaction, mixed with concern. They were winning individual battles, but the war was far from over. The devourers were adapting to the new tactics, requiring constant innovation to stay ahead of their evolutionary capabilities. The key to our continued success is maintaining tactical flexibility, Pete addressed the mixed human-alien audience. The moment we become predictable, the devourers will adapt and overcome our strategies. Commander Nick Hayes joined the briefing via secure transmission from the forward combat zone. His weathered face showed the strain of months commanding integrated alien-human units in actual combat against the devourers. General Collins, I can confirm that the tactical integration programs are exceeding all projections, Hayes reported. Mixed species units are achieving effectiveness levels 30% higher than pure species formations. Pete felt pride in what they had accomplished. Hayes's early work-training alien volunteers had evolved into a comprehensive military doctrine that was saving entire star systems. The missing SEAL teams had become the foundation of galactic salvation. Lieutenant Murphy, now promoted to Major and serving as intelligence coordinator, provided updates on devourer behavioral analysis. His work had identified patterns in enemy adaptation that allowed defensive forces to anticipate new attack strategies. The devourers appear to be developing countermeasures to our biological disruption techniques, Murphy reported. But they haven't adapted to our integrated tactical approaches. Their collective intelligence still cannot predict human innovation combined with alien capabilities. Stonewalker added his own intelligence from reptilian warrior networks throughout the galaxy. My people's deep space reconnaissance has identified the primary devourer breeding zones. They are vulnerable during reproductive cycles, but attacking them will require coordinated assault by our entire alliance. Pete realized they were discussing the decisive campaign of the war. If they could strike at the devourer breeding facilities during their vulnerable period, they might be able to break the enemy's ability to expand and adapt. But such an operation would require unprecedented coordination between hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. It would test every aspect of the integrated military doctrine they had developed over the past months. Ambassador Grant took over the strategic planning discussion. Her diplomatic skills had proven essential in maintaining alliance cohesion while different species contributed resources and personnel to the war effort. The political challenges are as complex as the military ones, Grant explained. Each species needs to feel their unique contributions are valued while maintaining unified command authority. Dr. Rodriguez presented biological analysis that would be crucial to the final assault. Her research teams had discovered weaknesses in devourer reproductive processes that could be exploited, but only if the attack was perfectly timed and coordinated. Pete found himself planning the largest military operation in galactic history. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds would strike simultaneously at targets scattered across multiple star systems. The logistics alone required computational capabilities that pushed alien technology to its limits. But the real challenge was maintaining tactical flexibility while coordinating such massive forces. Pete's solution drew on principles from his special forces background: create autonomous units capable of independent action while maintaining overall strategic coordination. The planning sessions continued for weeks as representatives from each allied species contributed their unique capabilities to the operation. Pete marveled at the diversity of approaches to warfare that different evolutionary paths had produced. Crystalline beings could manipulate electromagnetic frequencies in ways that disrupted déverrouillé quantum communications. Insectoid warriors provided swarm tactics that overwhelmed enemy adaptive responses through sheer complexity. Reptilian fighters offered the physical strength and endurance needed for extended combat operations, but it was human tactical innovation that tied everything together. The ability to see connections between disparate capabilities, to adapt plans in real time, and to inspire others to fight beyond their apparent limitations. These uniquely human traits had become the foundation of galactic defense. The final assault began at coordinates scattered across the galaxy's rim. Pete commanded from the flagship of the largest fleet ever assembled. But the real leadership happened at the small unit level where human-trained officers coordinated integrated alien teams. Stonewalker led the primary assault force against the largest Devourer breeding facility. His reptilian warriors worked alongside human special forces, crystalline disruption specialists, and insectoid swarm coordinators in perfect tactical harmony. Dr. Rodriguez monitored biological sensors throughout the battle zone, providing real-time analysis of Devourer adaptation attempts. Her scientific insights allowed tactical commanders to stay ahead of enemy evolutionary responses. Ambassador Grant coordinated political support from hundreds of worlds while managing the diplomatic complexities of species that had been enemies for millennia but now fought side by side against the common threat. The battle lasted 18 hours and ranged across 7 star systems. Pete watched tactical displays that showed the most complex military operation ever attempted. Human innovation combined with alien capabilities to create strategies that neither could have developed alone. When the last Devourer breeding facility was destroyed, a silence fell across the communication networks. For the first time in galactic memory, the seemingly unstoppable wave of destruction had been not just contained but pushed back to its source. Pete stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station 1 year later, watching graduation ceremonies for the latest class of integrated tactical specialists. Beings from across the galaxy had learned to fight together using principles that began with human military doctrine, but had evolved into something entirely new. Stonewalker joined him at the observation window, now bearing the insignia of full general in the Galactic Defense Forces. The reptilian warrior had become Pete's closest colleague and one of his most trusted friends. General Collins, the final intelligence reports confirm complete elimination of Devourer breeding capabilities, Stonewalker reported. The threat that terrorized this galaxy for millennia has been ended. Pete nodded with satisfaction, but his attention was already turning to future challenges. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in generations, but peace required different skills than war. Stonewalker, what do you think comes next for our alliance? The reptilian warrior considered the question with the tactical thinking that had made him so effective in combat. I believe we have created something unprecedented, General. An alliance based not on dominance or submission but on mutual respect for unique capabilities. Pete agreed. Humanity had joined the galactic community not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners whose contributions were genuinely valued. Earth had become the center of a new kind of civilization, where diversity was seen as strength rather than division. The final test came without warning. Pete Collins was reviewing tactical data in his quarters when alarms began echoing through the alien ship. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in harsh red as automated systems announced a crisis in multiple alien languages. Lieutenant Murphy's voice crackled through Pete's communication device. General, we're receiving distress signals from the outer system. A council research station has gone silent and long-range sensors show signs of hostile activity. Pete grabbed his gear and headed for the command center. Ambassador Grant and Dr. Rodriguez were already there, studying tactical displays that showed a frightening situation. The research station had been studying Devourer artifacts when something went catastrophically wrong. Speaker Valdris addressed the assembled human and alien personnel with obvious urgency. The research station was attempting to analyze captured Devourer technology when they lost containment. The facility is now overrun with what appears to be active Devourer organisms. The holographic display showed a space station surrounded by writhing masses of energy that consumed everything they touched. Ships that attempted rescue missions were being absorbed into the growing organism within minutes of contact. This is not a simulation, Valdris continued. The contamination is spreading and threatens nearby inhabited systems. Council military forces have attempted conventional responses with no success. Pete studied the tactical situation with growing understanding. This was the ultimate test. Not a simulation, but an actual crisis that required immediate solutions. The Council was gambling that humanity's tactical innovation could solve a problem that had defeated their best military minds. Dr. Rodriguez was already analyzing the biological data. Streaming from automated sensors around the station, these organisms are adapting faster than anything in my xenobiology database. They're learning to counter each defense almost immediately. Ambassador Grant coordinated with Council communication specialists to gather intelligence from the disaster zone. Her diplomatic training proved valuable in extracting useful information from panicked alien personnel. Pete activated his secure communication channel to contact Stonewalker. The reptilian warrior appeared on screen from somewhere deep in the ship's command structure. Stonewalker, is this the real test or another scenario? This is real, General Collins. The Council research into Devourer technology has created an outbreak that threatens multiple worlds. If we cannot contain it, the contamination will spread throughout this entire sector. Pete absorbed the implications, and if we succeed in stopping it, then humanity will have proven capable of solving problems that defeat traditional Council military thinking. Your species will be offered full partnership in galactic defense. Pete understood. Success would mean Earth joining the galactic community as equals. Failure would likely mean the destruction of the research station, nearby colonies, and possibly Earth itself. As the Council concluded, humanity was inadequate for the challenges ahead. He gathered Grant and Rodriguez for an emergency strategy session. We need to treat this like a special operations mission with diplomatic and scientific support. Our job is to demonstrate human problem-solving capabilities under impossible conditions. Pete's plan was audacious and dangerous. Instead of fighting the Devourer organisms directly, he proposed using their adaptive capabilities against themselves. The team would introduce multiple conflicting stimuli that would force the organisms to adapt in contradictory ways. Dr. Rodriguez would analyze the organism's biological processes to identify adaptation mechanisms. Ambassador Grant would coordinate with multiple alien species to provide different types of technological interference. Pete would direct the tactical implementation using small integrated teams rather than massive fleet actions. The mission required unprecedented cooperation between human personnel and alien allies. Stonewalker arranged for volunteer warriors from species that supported partnership with humanity. The team included crystalline beings whose harmonic abilities could disrupt energy-based organisms, insectoid specialists whose hive mind coordination provided tactical advantages, and reptilian warriors whose multiple arms allowed complex equipment manipulation. Pete found himself commanding the most diverse military unit in galactic history. Each species brought unique capabilities, but they had to learn to work together under extreme pressure while fighting an enemy that adapted to their strategies in real time. The approach to the research station required careful coordination. Traditional spacecraft were absorbed too quickly, so the team used a combination of alien stealth technology and human small unit infiltration tactics. They inserted in multiple small teams that could adapt independently while maintaining overall strategic coordination. Pete's team included Stonewalker, Dr. Rodriguez, and a crystalline being whose harmonic disruption abilities could potentially interfere with Devourer energy processes. As they approached the station, Pete could see the organism had grown to encompass most of the structure. The insertion was unlike anything from Pete's Special Forces training. They used alien technology to phase partially out of normal space, allowing them to bypass the organism's external defenses. But once inside the station, they faced horrors that no training could have prepared them for. The Devourer organisms had converted most of the station's interior into a maze of organic conduits that pulsed with alien intelligence. Walls breathed like living tissue while floors shifted constantly to trap intruders. The air itself seemed alive with microscopic organisms that attempted to infiltrate their protective suits, and our Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to analyze samples while the team fought, running battles with organism constructs that adapted to their weapons after each encounter. Her scientific training proved invaluable as she identified the biological processes that allowed such rapid adaptation. The organisms are quantum-linked, she announced over the team communication system. Each individual shares information instantly with the collective, but that connection might also be their weakness. Pete coordinated with the other insertion teams through Stonewalker's communication systems. Ambassador Grant was managing alien fleet coordination from the command ship while multiple species provided technological support for the ground operation. The breakthrough came when Dr. Rodriguez discovered that the organism's quantum connections could be disrupted by introducing information paradoxes. If they could force the collective to process contradictory adaptation requirements simultaneously, the entire network might collapse. Pete's tactical implementation required precise timing across multiple teams operating in different sections of the station. Each team had to present the organisms with adaptation challenges that were individually solvable but collectively impossible. The coordinated assault began with harmonic disruption from the crystalline beings that forced the organisms to adapt their energy frequencies. Simultaneously, insectoid teams introduced technological interference that required structural adaptations. Reptilian warriors provided kinetic challenges that demanded physical modifications. Pete's team struck at the central processing core where Dr. Rodriguez had identified the primary quantum communication node. Their job was to introduce the final paradox that would overload the entire adaptation network. The battle at the core was desperate and chaotic. Organism constructs attacked from multiple dimensions, while the station's structure shifted around them like a living nightmare. Pete found himself fighting alongside alien warriors whose tactics he barely understood, but whose dedication was absolute. Stonewalker proved to be as formidable in combat as Pete had suspected. The reptilian warrior's forearms wielded weapons with devastating effectiveness, while its tactical awareness kept the team coordinated through the impossible battle. The moment of truth came when Dr. Rodriguez activated her biological disruption device at the exact instant. Pete's team introduced the final information paradox. For a terrifying moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the organism collective began, convulsing as contradictory adaptation commands tore through its quantum network. The station shook as the devourer organisms collapsed into inert matter throughout the structure. Emergency systems began restoring life support as the biological contamination lost coherence and dissolved into harmless organic compounds. Pete's communication system crackled with reports from all teams. The mission was successful. The devourer outbreak had been contained using tactics that no single species could have developed alone.